All right, welcome, welcome everybody to episode 200 of the Michael Lab Show. Hopefully, my voice can make it. Still, just now, finally getting over the sickness. Jesus Christ, it's been a solid 3 weeks. It's been a solid 3 weeks since I came down with the good old fashioned cold. Wasn't COVID. I never got tested. You know, I don't know. Does that make me a bad citizen for being sick for 3 straight weeks with pretty much most of the COVID symptoms? I think I had most of the COVID symptoms. I'm not sure. I could taste my food. I smelled everything. I'm pretty sure. I mean, there's no way I had COVID because everybody in my family was sick and all of us had the vaccine. And if I did have COVID and all of us had the vaccine, and that means they all had the vaccine, they all got sick, then we are in some deep waters here in the United States of America. But what's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me on this episode 200 of the Michael Lab Show. I think a coyote just ran out in front of my front yard. Episode 200. That's insane to say. We've started this podcast. Let's go back and see when my first episode was. It's been at least 2 years. It's definitely been at least 2 years. Let's see. Jesus Christ. So many changes to the podcast. Like I used to do clips. I don't really do clips anymore. I think I should. Maybe I should start doing the clips again. Dealing with depression, why we sleep, beauty of Terrence McKenna. I used to do so many clips. So episode, Jesus, I have so many. I've been doing YouTube for such a long time. Okay, so episode 1 of the Michael Lab Show was done in 1 year. Okay, so 1 year ago, July 18th, 2019. So we have 2 years ago, and then once we hit July 18th, it's going to be 2 years fully on the podcast. How many episodes left is that going to be? We're going to figure this all out. So on my 2-year anniversary of the podcast, we're going to be at, okay, so July 18th, we have one. So 200, 201, 202, 203, 204, 205, 206, 207, 207, I think 208, 209. I think we're going to be at 200, episode 209 by the time we hit the 2-year anniversary of the show. Obviously I could keep saying it as much as I want, but thank you guys so much for sticking with me the entire way. I know it hasn't always been, the easiest thing to do. Some episodes are a lot better than others. Some episodes are, not that good. Like this episode may not be the best. It's fascinating because when I first started it, I thought I would have to come in every single episode just with like full energy. And that's just not true. Like some episodes, it's the way I wanted this podcast to be was it is me. And it is me until the end. So what does that mean? That means my personality is going to show. You're going to understand who I am, what I'm about, what I believe in. And if I'm not in the best mood one day, I'll come on and talk about it, or I will talk about other things, and you can hear the way I actually feel and think. I got to water those plants or Taylor will be pissed. I definitely have to water those plants. Holy shit. But I've stuck to what has gotten me to thousands of listeners, tens of thousands of listeners. And I think I like that. That's my niche. It's kind of weird when you think about, because, nowadays in order to grow a podcast, the big thing is you need a niche. And I think sometimes one of the biggest niches in the world that is not exploited is just having a podcast where you are yourself every time. It's weird. It's like, well, that's not a niche, but it is a niche because so many people have these podcasts where they talk about baseball, they talk about belts, or they talk about watches, or they talk about finances, or they talk about, farm animals or what TV shows, The Bachelor. Like there's so many different types of podcasts out there, but none of the podcasts, I mean, some podcasts, but there's not a huge market out there for just, I'm going to tune in to listen to this person, how they are doing, how is their day, how are they absorbing the information around them. It's kind of like a radio show in that sense. So that's what I love most about this show. I've had occasional guests on, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not happy with the amount of guests I've had on. I haven't had like any guests. It's just family. And then it's solo. And, a lot of that has to do with my situation. So just to be perfectly honest with everybody, I'm in the middle of finishing up school, right? So I'm trying, that's kind of like, if there's a hierarchy of things, that's kind of number one. I've been putting it off for a while. I'm going to graduate at 25 years old. I need to get that done. Once I get that done, then I want to get in a place where I can move out, hopefully move in with my girlfriend. And then once that's done, then maybe I can go ahead and look at different areas. And then maybe like a studio here and there, or maybe even a house where we can have like a shed or something. I don't know. I'm not too sure. But what I do know is as long as I can do it, I'm going to continue to put out episodes. And then once the guests do come on, I think that's going to be a huge bump to the podcast. It's going to be a huge bump for me because one of the hardest things about a podcast is talking, for 40 minutes. Because I like all my episodes, I try to put at 40 minutes. An hour's just too long. I mean, that's an extra 40 hours a week talking. That's a long time. And then, some weeks you got to do an extra episode and whatnot. But, during the whole time, two times a week, we put out a video, and I say the we is me. I run this whole thing. This is just me. The mics, the lights, the cameramans. I've had people in the past help me, show me, give me the ropes, show me the ropes to things. But everything you see is just me. The studio design, my corner, my bedroom, the lights, the cameras, the microphones, everything. Everything is just for me. And I think there's going to be a point where I'm going to outsource. And once I outsource, I think that's going to be a huge pivoting moment for this podcast. Even like the marketing, all that's me. Instagram, that's me. But I truly believe in consistency. I think if you're consistent with something, it's going to pay off, and you just can't rush it. You just got to keep going. How many things have you done in your life where you do it every single week for 2 years straight? Besides the basics like eating and sleeping, those things keep you alive. But has there actually been something? And work is not even, you can't even say work because work, you have to do it. But something that you are doing, you're investing a lot in, and you aren't seeing the benefits. You're not seeing huge benefits. A little bit, here and there, you get a bump here, you get this here, you get a compliment there. But for the majority of the time, you're just kind of eating dirt. You're just kind of dealing with slow growth. How many people are out there willing to do something like that? I don't think a lot. And I don't think most people are going to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of people with a lot of extreme success, and the people who do have it, your assumption is that it's just kind of happened for them. That's not true, and I've only been at this for 2 years. There's people podcasting that it took 5 to 10 years for them to really pop off. All like the biggest podcasters of the world right now, even like let's just talk about a Rogan, for example. Joe Rogan's been doing it since 2010, 2011. He is a household name now. I've been listening to him since 2017, maybe. And I'm a huge fan of him. But at 2017, he was famous, but he wasn't the Joe Rogan of today. And I'm sure between 2010 and 2015, he was just the Fear Factor guy. And, it's one of those things. And, Theo Von and Brendan Schaub and all these guys, like, you just don't know. But the thing that you do know, the thing that you can control, the only thing that you control is the consistency that you put into something. And if you get into it for the wrong reasons, that you will be exploited very quickly. You will be pushed aside very quickly. You will give up very quickly. If you're going into something and you want to see this result by this day, you want to do this by this day, it's like, it's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. It's one of those things where you need enough money to survive, to live a life. And then if you have that covered, then you should really work on your passion project or something that you invest in, something that you enjoy doing. And if you don't enjoy it, get like stop what you're doing and don't do it. Just don't do it anymore because it's a waste of your time. Because I think even if you do succeed, that you think that you're going to start loving whatever you're doing, it doesn't work that way. You're just going to hate it, but be successful at it. And, you see that a lot with people and like their jobs that they choose. It's really hard for someone to be completely, you can fool a lot of people around you. You can fool the people closest to you. You can fool the job that you work with. But the one thing you can't fool is yourself. If you know when you don't like something, and you might know it, you might be like where I was in college when I figured it out. You might be in high school. You might be, 2 years into your job at Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, or you might be 10 years into it. And then by that point, you're just lying to yourself. But you're going to keep on becoming more successful because the assumption is that the income, the money as it increases is going to make you more, it's gonna put a bandage on all the hatred that you have towards it. It's just not true. You're gonna develop resentment, and that resentment's gonna build. And when it builds, it's not just gonna affect you. It's gonna affect everything else that you built in your life. It's gonna affect the people around you, and those people are gonna be your spouses. Those people are gonna be your kids. Those people are gonna be your parents. Those people are gonna be your coworkers. Like, you really got to do the thing that you like and become a master at it. Because if you become a master at it, that's when you're going to shine. That's when the money's going to come. That's when the fame, if you're in it for fame, that's when the fame's going to come. That's when, the enjoyment of it is going to come. And if you can master your passion and you can figure out a way to add a stream of revenue for it, that's huge. That's huge. And that's what this podcast is. I feel like I'm slowly becoming, every episode I'm becoming better and better. And it's like little things. It's like the position of the lights, position of the camera, zoom in, zoom out. Like, go ahead and watch some of my first videos. My first podcast ever is hilarious because me and the guy who's helped me produce it, we could not figure out how to line up. I had no idea, like, what do you mean line up video and the audio? Got to line it up. Like, the audio, what I'm speaking to in the mic is it's recorded on a completely different platform than the camera. They're not linked together unless you get like a really expensive software, which I don't have because I don't have just $500 to spend. And then once you have that, then you gotta line up my mouth with the voice of the microphone. How do you do that? Like, this should be super easy. It's not super easy. I remember for the first 2 or 3 months of this podcast, I was driving every day. I would do a podcast. I would get in my car and I would go to a local community college. I don't think I was even in school yet at this time. I don't think I was in school yet. I think I was still dropped out of college. But I remember I would go to the local community college, and from there I would figure out how to. I put like this stuff in my hair to make it up like this. It looks horrible. I don't know what I'm growing my hair up, but I don't really know what that means. How does it look? It looks horrible. So I could use the Adobe Final Cut Pro. Like, it was just wild. But those are the things you do when you really want to build something, when you really want to build a platform for it. And now 2 years later, almost 2 years later, but 200 episodes later, I'm at a point now where people know about the podcast. They ask about it. People watch it. People talk to me about it. And like, it's a good feeling, when your passion project becomes known. It's not about fame, but it's about the, being, it's an approval thing. For me, it might be a flaw. I'm not too sure, but I love approval. I want to know I'm doing the right thing. And I'm like that in my relationship. I'm like that with work. I want to know I'm doing the right thing. And sometimes I don't think I'm doing the right thing at all. Sometimes like the Dunning-Kruger effect. I think that's what it's called. Dunning-Kruger effect. Oh no, that's not it. That's the opposite. Anyways, there's this effect. There's this thing where you, what is it called? Syndrome. Imposter syndrome. So, you know what I'm talking about, where you don't feel like you're ever doing enough. And I mean, that's me from, top to bottom. That's me. I never feel like I'm doing the right thing. I never feel like I'm doing enough. I constantly feel like I'm struggling. You know, I constantly feel like the podcast sucks. I suck. I suck at work. I suck at school. And there's a little bit of approval that I need. And I don't want that, but it's, you know, it's might be that one flaw that I have for my entire life. And that's fine. You know, I don't think that's a big deal. It's nothing I'm really too concerned about. But a few things I want to talk about. A few things I do want to talk about. Rapper Playboy Carti did not predict COVID-19 in 2018. Thank God. Fact Check is going ahead and wasting spending their money on stuff like that, because God forbid if we thought somebody with 3 freaking brain cells had the ability to predict COVID-19. And you know, it's not even like whatever. I don't know. I'm distracted. But I'm about to, this is for you, Mr. Theo Vaughn. This is an invitation because I'm following what you said, man. I'm following what you said, man. So you did a podcast. The podcast. You did a Anthrax opening with Ari Manis. And in that podcast, or opening of whatever, the gifts that people get you, you distinctly said, I only do podcast. I only be a guest on podcasts for podcasts at 100 videos, 100 podcast episodes. And then you bumped it up to 200 because you didn't go on Ari Manis' podcast. But now it's at 200. So this is my invitation to you, Mr. Rat King. I am at 200 episodes. I'm nothing. I'm nothing to you. I'm worthless. I cannot bring you anything. There's nothing I can bring you. I can talk about you. I can tell my friends about you. But in the grand scheme of things, I just listen to all your episodes, all your podcasts, listen to your funny stories about people sucking on hoses and stuff, and your friends hitting walls and dying because they're on pills. That doesn't sound too funny when I say it, but I can do that. That's what I can do. But what can you do? I'm at 200 episodes. I could be a guest on your podcast. I'm pitching myself here. I could be a guest on your podcast as the first ever amateur, below average podcaster on a podcast. So if that's something that you want to do, we could put it together. I'll come on your show. You can rip into me for wearing my Guns N' Roses shirt. You can rip into me for having this weird, Backstreet Boys hair. You can rip in on me as much as you want. But 200 episodes, I've done it. It's a huge accomplishment. I know you only do guests. You're only going to be a guest on podcasts if they have at least 200 episodes. We did it. I'm just kidding, but I did listen to that episode, and it was kind of, dude's hilarious. You know, he's talking about how he only does podcasts if they have 200 episodes, but I did it, man. So I'm just looking for an invitation. I'll DM you. I'll send this to your boy Nick, and you guys can roast me on King of this thing for being an idiot, because definitely an idiot. I'm definitely an idiot. So what's going on? We are halfway done with this episode. A few things I wrote down. I've wrote a few things down about I've wrote a few things down. I'm looking at my notes here. This is just like the last 4 things that I wrote down on my notes. This is when I want to explain to people. This is what happens in my mind, and then when they're translated into words and time goes on, I look at them like, what the hell am I talking about? I wrote people at gas pumps, Sam's Club. Talk about operations from America, such as Operation Mockingbird, the prom party trial, why it's so important to not denounce the intelligence of intellectual classes. Come at me, Theo, for 200. That's what that was. So let's talk about a few of these. I've been reading a lot about Russians' 20th century history, and it's incredible. There's a few things. First of all, it's incredible how I've never talked about it, right? I've never been taught anything about it. Russia's never come up. The only time I've ever heard about it is during World War II. And I don't think we learned about World War II in school. We might have, and I just was checked out and thought it was dumb because, just a dumb teenager who doesn't care about anything. But I didn't know much about it at all. And then about 2 months ago, I kind of got into this wormhole of a Netflix series called World War II in color, and it takes you all the way through the war, from the beginning to the end, from the end of the World War One, where it talks about why World War II erupted. Germany was weak; they lost their identity. They were smothered during World War One, so they needed to find their identity again. And it talks about that, and then it talks, towards the end of it, it talks about how Hitler had a deal with Stalin. Hitler broke that deal. Stalin was like, "F you, brother. We're gonna mess you up. You're attacking us now. You're taking our oil, Leningrad, and not cool, man. Not cool at all. You're attacking Finland and stuff, and you're gonna have to pay for this." And then it talks about how Stalin came in and just demolished them. And I'm like, Stalin is president. He's the dictator. He's the communist leader of Russia. They're the USSR. What happened? How did he get there? And then I found another Netflix show called The Tsar, The Last Tsar of Russia. And it talked about the last Tsar of Russia. I think his name was Nicholas, the last Tsar of Russia, and how him and his family were murdered in a basement, all shot in the head and killed in 1918, I believe. And then there was that moment where Russia fell into darkness. It fell into darkness where there was so many opposing parties. There was the Bolsheviks led by Lenin. There was just multiple parties, and it talked about the corruption of this country. And the part that really fascinated me the most, and I'm reading the Gulag, and I'm about 2/3 of the way done with book number 1, and then between those books, I have a bunch of books on God I want to read. One of my buddies at the gym brought me 2 books. He's a pastor, and he is. We had a conversation about Jesus, and I'm not a believer. I'm not. I might be a believer, but I haven't discovered that yet, and I don't practice any faith, and he is a pastor. He's a young guy about my age, and he brought me in 2 books called The Reason for God and Making Sense of God. So I'm going to give one of those a go, but what's actually even more funny is that the same month he brought me these 2 books, the month prior, I went ahead and ordered a book called Operation Gladio, which is Unholy Alliance Between the Vatican, the CIA, and the Mafia. Written by a guy named Paul L. Williams. Let's see if I can get a summary real quick. I ordered this a while ago because I wanted to read about the Mafia. I guess there's no summary. But it's just the irony that he got me a book about God, and I'm reading a book about how, there's apparently a unholy alliance between the Vatican, the CIA, and the Mafia. Because, I don't know, it's kind of a hilarious dichotomy. And then one of my buddies, who I know from the gym, went ahead and got me a book. And he didn't buy it for me. It's his book. I'm going to give it back to him. But it's called Tattoos on the Heart. And it's a 230-page book, but it's easy to read. It's large font. There's not much to it. So I'm going to go ahead and knock this book out too. It's by a guy named Gregory Boyle. For 20 years, Gregory Boyle has run Homeboy Industries, a gang intervention program located in the Boyle Heights neighborhood in Los Angeles. But I'm going to go ahead and read this book and give it back to him. And what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So Russia. So in between the Gulag, because I have all the books right here for the Gulag, I've got to read one of those. I'm going to read Tattoos on the Heart, Gulag number 2, and then probably The Reason for God, Gulag number 3, and then Making Sense of God. And then I got a bunch of books I want to read about psychology, and then I got a book that I bought a long time ago, but I haven't read yet. It's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. I've been thinking about doing like a a sub series on this podcast or on my channel where I talk about books that I've read, like Michael Lab's library, where I just kind of summarize, because there's a lot of books here that I have read, and I'm thinking about maybe one day rereading them. I need to expand my library. I don't really have much room left because I don't want to move my podcast thing because it looks so cool. But I want to kind of expand it. I haven't decided yet because all those books are like faintly in my head, and I kind of want to be like on point when I read those. But anyways, there's a part in the Gulag where, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who is the author of it, who was locked up in the Gulag, he talks about just how the Communist Party run by the justice system was run by this guy named Krylenko, and Krylenko was a right-hand man of Stalin. He actually won the Order of Stalin, or the Medal of Stalin, or whatever. Or no, sorry, not Stalin. Yeah, no, Stalin. Yeah, Stalin. He won it a lot, like 8, 9, 10, or 11 times. He won it one of the most times, and they were basically going in to the Soviet Union, or Russia at the time, and they were rounding up the intellectuals, astronomers, mathematicians, philosophers, writers, people that are literate, people who are the truth. They're the truth vessels, delivering the truth of reality. And truth is something that can set you free. And truth is dangerous when its opposition is a communist party, where they don't want people to find truth, where they want people to be brainwashed, and they want people to follow their rules. And you're seeing that a lot with China, where they, Jinping, who's the president of China, People's Republic of China, they're just a communist country where they own all the phones, and the phones have their own. They portray what they're supposed to show, where they just have an overarching amount of power. The idea of being on the scientists and stuff there, they only report if it supports what the country of China backs. There's no freedom of discovery. And it's just, I was reading this, and, all these great minds just being locked away for so long or being killed with just these amazing ideas. I think what really struck a nerve with me is that I don't think people give enough credit to evolution is real, right? Like, there's things that happen to people or animals where they change to adapt to the environment changes them, then they're forced to change, and if you don't, you die. But what is it, that top 1% that makes the biggest change? It's these ideas. And how do these ideas come from? Like, where do they come from? It's like these really intelligent people they observe the physical being, the physical world, and then they use their imagination to think of things and how it can be altered, or what can we add, or how does light fade away from, or why is it when light comes in dark, the darkness fades away? What is that? Why can a bird fly and we can't fly? Like, how do you fix that? But these people can cause such a rift with the government, or with the all power, or with the God, even with the Allah, with the Jesus, with whoever your God is. It can cause a serious rift, because what happens when people who believe in what you say are hit with reality, and reality is not what they're being told? It causes an existential crisis, and you can't have that. It makes the rest of the country, it puts the rest of the country at danger. So during these trials, there was no winning for these people. They went to jail. They were so knowledgeable, but they went to jail. And it's just a reminder that happens all the time. Like, I was watching this show, I haven't finished it. It's called First They Killed My Father, and it's about the communist takeover by Pol Pot in 1975. in Cambodia when America withdrew the troops after bombing them for so long. And Pol Pot came in, and what he did is, if you were a farmer already, you were stayed a farmer. But what he did is he believed cities were evil, ideas were evil. They were creations of individualism. He hated individualism, and it's something that you see all the time in societies. They strip down the individual. They make you feel guilty for caring about yourself. You can't have that. It's about the community, because what happens when you have a community that's no longer individualistic? They give to a few people. They give to one person, because everything that they do is benefiting somebody, and that somebody is Kim Jong-un. That somebody is Xi Jinping. That somebody is Pol Pot. That somebody is Hitler, Lenin, Stalin, Mussolini. Like, it's somebody. And I think it's, or Ho Chi Minh is another one for you. I think people just don't conceptualize that until it's too late. And I think it's very important to understand that these truth seekers play a vital role in our society. They play a vital role in our society. And I don't know how I want to, I don't know if I even want to talk about it, but I think I'm going to work my way around it a little bit. I was listening to this episode with Rogan, and Rogan had this lady on. Let me look up her name, because I want to give her credit, because she was incredible. And it was one of the best episodes they've ever done together. He did one with Duncan Trussell, which was always good. But her name is Carol Hooven, and she's a professor at Harvard, and her field of study is testosterone. And she wrote a book called T. And she's a scientist, and she's in one of those fields where it has constantly been under attack for the last 10 years. And it's been under attack because of this world that we live in now, where we have... Let me take a sip of my water before I, get attacked by everybody. I'm just kidding. Not enough people listen to me to get attacked. I always say that, but not enough people listen to me get attacked. But the first time it happens, I'll be like, huh? Me? Are you sure? But we live in this society where we believe in equality. And I do too. I believe in equality when it's realistic. But I don't believe in equality when it comes to biology boundaries, physical attributes, the way that men and female on average are different. There's a lot of reasons why why most CEOs are men. On average, men are much more willing to ruin their lives, to take extreme risk, to abuse themselves, to achieve a higher standard of success or income. They're much more willing to abandon their family. They're much more willing to destroy their relationship. They're much more willing to do these very high risk, miniature reward, huge reward, but very unlikely. And this is across the animal kingdom. This includes humans. But we live in this world where me saying that is an attack on equality, and it's not an attack on equality. It's backed by biology, but biology is a science. It's hard evidence, but it's been under attack because I can't say that because I'm being sexist, I'm being biased, I'm being disabled. It's like, no, you're not being that at all. You're just speaking the truth. And once it's one of these things where it's on average, and she was talking about this on average. You're going to have a woman, you're going to have a guy who's this or that. Like one of my teachers at Towson, she worked, she's my marketing professor. She worked really high at McCormick. She is a woman, and she kicked ass. And it's not saying it's impossible, but on average, the majority, and there's a reason why science has been under attack in this country for anything that talks about sex differences at all. And it's scary. And the reason why it's so successful is because the top academics in the whole country, the way that they make money is through being a professor, but also by selling books, by going on tour. And their whole who they are is completely torn down if they show evidence of something that contradicts what people want to believe, their emotions. Because emotions aren't a thing. Emotions are real, but facts don't care about your emotions. And sometimes the truth is things are the way they are and they won't make people happy. But I kind of, I don't know why, but I kind of just like, I made this connection to like this Russian time period where people are confused and they're angry and they're picking these sides and they think these sides are like the end all be all, like, oh, Lenin's going to save us. And then other people who don't believe in that at all. And you kind of see it now in this country where it's like, oh, Biden's going to be the savior, but nothing's happened. Nothing's been changed. Trump is the evil man, but nothing happened. Nothing changed when he was a president. And it's this idea that things change is most likely, most of the time, just the way that you interpret what's going on in the world. And I think that's kind of where we find ourselves, where we're experiencing this we're like all waking up and we're attacking things that shouldn't be attacked. Biology can be biology. We can have two sexes, but we can have multiple genders, right? We can have a penis and a vagina, and we can have those as being the only thing in the world. And then you could feel a different way. Nobody's saying you can't, but it's when you attack these certain staples of our institutions where I think it could become dangerous. History does have a crazy way to repeat itself, and it happens all the time across all nations. And I'm not saying that that's what's happening in this country. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just saying it's ignorant to believe that it couldn't happen. It's ignorant to believe that it's not potentially an outcome. But yeah, it's a fascinating book, and it's just sad that, smartest people in the world, they are embraced when they're needed. But when there's radical change in a country, they are the first ones to go because they supported the movement of the previous office, right? They were the truth seekers. And when your truth doesn't line up with what somebody else's truth is, you're going to be in a world of pain. And that's kind of what happened these past 6 years. I've never seen somebody get so much hate but be so I know so many people who hated Donald Trump so much, but they were more obsessed with him than Donald Trump supporters. It was a wild phenomenon. It's one of the things that anthropologists and sociologists are probably going to be looking at forever. How can this guy who brought so much pain and suffering to people's lives, all they had to do was stop watching him, and that would have been gone? It's weird, right? It's a strange thing because your gut reaction is like, that's not true, but it kind of is true. If you just didn't watch Fox or CNN for 4 years, you would have had a completely different 4 years. You just would have. You would have paid less taxes, and you wouldn't know what's going on. And then people will rebuttal, well, you should know what's going on. I agree, but who is there truth anymore? Where do you get your information from? Is there truth anymore in this country? I would go out on a limb here and say there's not. There's not a lot of truth out there. There's a lot of stories, but they're repackaged, they're rebranded, they fit an ideology, and then they're pushed. But there's not a lot of truth out there anymore. So then people create their own stories. They create these monsters. It's really fascinating where, like you see it in TV shows and movies where there's evil and there's good. And then there's a Joker that comes along. Or like there's a Batman that comes along who Batman is like obsessed with attacking the evil. But on his way of doing that, he hurts the good. You can't have that in this world. We're dumb chimps. We need good and evil. If there's not good and evil, we just stuff our faces with peanuts and we sit back and we go, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to sit here and complain now, But I think it's good to read about truth. I think it's good to read books on science. I think it's good to read books on, biology, physics. Physics is like one of the most beautiful things to study because it is the absolute truth. It is the absolute truth. You cannot argue with it. Physics is a beautiful thing. Math is, I just listened to a beautiful podcast with a mathematician, just gorgeous, out of the University of Madison, Wisconsin. It's beautiful because it's just there. And there's no arguing. There's no pointing fingers. You can't put blame on anybody. I don't know. Maybe that's a hot take, and maybe I'm speaking out of term here, but that's just my opinion, and that's what I believe. And I think it's dangerous when you start attacking the truth seekers. It hasn't worked in the past. That's episode 200, guys. Thank you so much for doing everything that you guys do. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell a friend about the podcast. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, Google Podcasts. Also, you can donate to the podcast too. Still take donations to the podcast if you want to do that. It is up for donation. The link is in the description below. But until Thursday, guys, have a beautiful, beautiful week. Go get yourself a nice tan. Don't get arrested. Don't get pulled over. Don't do something dumb. If you're going to jaywalk, at least look both ways for your jaywalk, or you will become roadkill. And we don't want roadkill out there because it's a lot to clean up. And guess what? I'm sure you're a good person, and I don't want you to die. That's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for almost 2 years of podcasting. Thank you so much for 200 episodes. Every one of my episodes has had to download, which is so cool. But I'll catch you guys in episode 201 of the Michael Lab Show. Peace out. See ya. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.